So I'm going to introduce a practice today called the stop practice. It's a short mindfulness skill-based practice that we can use in daily life and has a lot of important skills for our mental health and supporting our well-being through difficult emotions, difficult thoughts. So STOP is an acronym and it begins with the letter S, obviously. You can all spell, I'm sure. So S is for stop, or you can adjust it to slowing down. So in our daily life, it can be important to actually pause and completely stop things, especially if it's something that's destructive to our well-being, an addictive, compulsive process, for example. Or if we're getting very stressed, sometimes we think we have to do more, but actually by slowing down we will achieve more, and stopping and pausing we let our nervous system reset. It can also be slowing down, so the S can be for slow down, and this can just mean reducing the tendency to rush and move quickly, speak quickly, act quickly. You know, there's a time and a place for that, of course we need to do that for certain tasks and certain jobs, but often when we are anxious we can slow down. At the other end of the spectrum, for something like depression, the slowing down might mean more that we just gradually start doing something. So we've already stopped often when we're depressed, but to start moving at a fast pace could be really difficult. So the slow beginning of activity could be just what we need at that point. The T is for take a breath, or I'm making an adjustment for it to be taken in your environment as well. So for some people the breath is a really strong support. It's very calming. It taps into our nervous system in a way that is often very soothing, especially if we use it as an anchor rather than as something to try and control emotions, something to support us. But for some people it just doesn't work. It's not a good a good anchor. So if you're one of these people, we shouldn't feel any shame if an aspect of mindfulness doesn't work for us. It should be just adjusting and customizing the practice so that it does work for us. So for this one, I might adjust it to taking in the environment if you are struggling with the breath and the breath is activating panic or anxiety or this kind of thing. So taking in the environment could be going for the sensation of touch and going for the contact points with where you're sitting or standing or lying. So the contact with the chair, contact with the ground, position of our hands and feet, and that sense of stability in the body. And that can often communicate to our survival brain that actually we're safe, we're secure, and it could be a more effective and more neutral anchor than the breath for some people. Taking in the environment could also be looking around and noticing things that you can see, you can hear, you can feel, and possibly taste and smell, depending on what you're doing and how those senses are for you. And we can do that in different ways. We could literally notice and name 3 to 5 different sense objects. So 3 things we can hear, 3 things we can see, 3 things we can feel, etc., going through the different senses. And sometimes the labeling is helpful as well. To describe it, to use language can unhook us a bit more. So you could play with that. And that can be, that can be a good option. So we either bring our attention to our breathing and take a number of deep, gentle breaths, or we take in the environment. The O is for observe. So this is this part of mindfulness where we bring the observation to our own body and mind. So we notice what is going on in the body. We can do a quick body scan from our head down to our feet and just noticing what sensations are there. Are there any emotional sensations? So that's just feeling sensations that you would identify as emotional. Often down the midline of the body, the heart, the stomach, the face, the throat, the jaw, But it can be the whole body, you know, our nervous system's in the whole body, so we can feel emotions all over, and it's very personal. People will feel emotions in different ways, so you just notice in what you can feel. And you can notice and name that again using labeling, which we'll talk about more in other videos, can be a really good way to practice mindfulness, especially in the beginning when it's harder to observe what's going on. So you just notice and name sensations. If they're vague, then you just name them as vague. If it's just pain or tension or numbness or vagueness, you know, whatever that feeling is, you can name that as a vague emotional feeling. We also observe our thinking process, so mental images, mental talk, what's going on in our thinking brain. Is it calm and still, which can happen when we observe the mind, or is there a lot of activity going on? And again, we can notice and name this. We can just call it thinking. Silently in our mind, we just say thinking, or we can describe the type of thinking, so judging, planning, ruminating, worrying, or more positive daydreaming, fantasizing about something you hope to achieve or to experience. So whatever, it could be negative thoughts, it could be positive thoughts, we can notice and name those. And we can also use tools from acceptance and commitment therapy, like slightly longer language-based interventions, like describing, I am having the thought of, and then XYZ, whatever the thought is. So if you're feeling very anxious, I am having the thought that I'm not safe. Or if you're feeling depressed, I am having the thought that there's no hope. Or, I'm a terrible person. So you just prefix that thought with I am having the thought that, and that's really helpful if you're very hooked by a thought. So the more absorbed you are into that thought, the more that might be useful as a process. So we notice and name emotions and thoughts, and then P for proceed. And there's lots of versions of stop. So you see stop in mindfulness-based stress reduction from John Kabat-Zinn. You see it in dialectical behavior therapy. You see versions of it in ACT and other mindfulness interventions. And this P stage for me is really where we link to the value-based committed action from ACT. So we choose our next action consciously, and then we proceed with mindfulness, being engaged in what we're doing, and we make it something that we value and we care about. So if we've been struggling, we've been caught in difficult thoughts, we think, what is the next activity we can do? What can we proceed into that will be supportive? And then we do that, and then we run through stop again if we need to, if we get hooked by difficult thoughts and feelings, or we feel distracted, not really present in what we're doing, then we can run the whole process again. And so that's really the stop practice for me, the way I do it. So stop or slow down, take a breath or take in your environment, observe your thoughts and feelings, proceed with a value-based direction. And we'll talk more about resources of guided practices for this, where you could follow this through until you get the habit in you and you get it well developed so it comes naturally. And then the next video we'll talk a little bit about how you might apply this to mental health challenges and struggles. So I hope you enjoyed this, and the key thing is to practice. So to take this practice, give it a go, see if it's helpful. And when we say helpful, we don't mean to get rid of difficult thoughts and feelings, but to provide us with stability to move through them and to do the things we care about. Okay, thanks.